this FDA committee led by FDA bureaucrat Janet Woodcock decided to essentially do nothing, kick the can down the road. I think she fits a pattern of a lot of deep state folks. You think about a J. Edgar Hoover, you think about a Anthony Fauci. Americans at this point, many Americans have a healthy mistrust of the FDA because of the
That's an understatement. I think they outright think they suck. There were some key players in this that really kind of jumped out at me. And one was the former Food and Drug Administration acting commissioner, Janet Woodcock. Can you talk about her and what you found with her relationship to the sequence of this PR nightmare potentially that they had to manage?
Yeah, so part of the documents that we looked at were describing this meeting in 2018 where this rank and file FDA epidemiologist overseeing the safety of over-the-counter drugs made a presentation to a committee of FDA higher-ups and said, here's the science. For reasons that remain unclear to me, they weren't even considering a label change. Currently, the Trump administration and Kennedy are issuing a label change or initiating a label change which the drug company is fighting. But they didn't even consider that. They just thought, should we, as the rank and file FDA epidemiologist was repeatedly recommending, should we issue some sort of nuanced communication to pregnant women about the potential for risk? And this FDA committee of higher-ups led by longtime FDA bureaucrat Janet Woodcock decided to essentially do nothing, kick the can down the road. They commissioned that toxicology report that we were just talking about that we don't know the results of, and said nothing, remained silent. I think this is notable because Americans at this point, many Americans have a healthy mistrust of the FDA because of the
That's an understatement. I think they outright think they suck. I mean, oh my God. I listened to Tucker's latest interview with Dr. Huff, who was a part of EcoHealth Alliance. I almost fell out of my chair. I already have my own suspicions of where it came from. Why? I've been listening to Dr. Malone since day one on all that, right? And had him on the show, talk about it a few months ago. And, and to see this now, it's like, well, it's everywhere you look, right? It's not just, the pandemic of COVID. Now it's Tylenol. Now it's the COVID, it's the mRNA vaccines. How many other drugs in the past were hidden by these bureaucratic officials? And I think we're just seeing another intense reality of, I think, a much deeper basket of potential problems with the Food and Drug Administration's relationships with Big Pharma. So were there some other things? I thought I remembered in the article there were some other, I don't want to say scandals, but there are other questionable drugs and other things that she was a part of as well. Is that true?
I think she fits a pattern of a lot of longtime deep state folks who simply occupy a position of power for too long, unaccountable to any election, right? Like you think about a J. Edgar Hoover, you think about a Anthony Fauci. You're in the same position decade after decade after decade. She was at the FDA for 4 decades. You start to accumulate this bureaucratic power that seems almost unaccountable to Congress, unaccountable to elected officials, because you have been around longer and are more knowledgeable and can play the Washington game better than anybody who could fire you. And I think an interesting contrast is looking at some of the people who are in positions of influence at FDA now. You have a Marty McCary, you have a Vinay Prasad, folks who have been critical of the entrenched bureaucracy and who want to shake things up. And you have the Wall Street Journal calling for their heads. You don't see that with Janet Woodcock, despite her being there for 4 decades. So what does that tell you? It tells you that she was, a creature of the status quo. People will often mention FDA user fees, that the FDA is sort of funded by the industry it's supposed to regulate. I think that definitely played a role in her behavior. And you allude to other controversial decisions that she oversaw. I mean, she was the head of the division of the FDA that oversees opioids for the beginning, middle, and up until very recently, end of there's no end to the opioid crisis, but she was there at the beginning of the opioid crisis. She, led that division at the time of the approval of OxyContin, and then subsequently oversaw the approval of many other dangerous opioids, sometimes overriding the FDA's own scientific advisors to do so. And then as recently as 2020, defended that infamous decision of the FDA to approve OxyContin, saying it followed all of their standards and protocols. So what does that say about FDA standards and protocols? So as I said, I think Americans at this point, post-COVID especially, have this healthy skepticism of the FDA. And there's this attitude, I think, in the mainstream press that how dare Kennedy challenge the science, but I think the responsibility is on these institutions to prove that they are following the science. It's sort of up to them to regain our trust, because there have been so many scandals. And I think top of mind for me right now is, why did FDA officials override the recommendation of one of their top epidemiologists to warn pregnant women about Tylenol? What was the harm in just saying, hey, we're reviewing the science and this is what the science is indicating right now? So
I that is the multi-million-dollar question from Tylenol's concern, for sure. And from all the people whose children that potentially that this might have harmed in some capacity. I mean, I remember, when I have 4 daughters, when, with 2 of the new marriage, but when I was, a young father with my first children, they get sick, they get a fever. What's first thing I'm doing? I'm giving them a dose of Tylenol, right? The liquid, grape Tylenol that you buy in bulk from Walgreens and all these other places, because there's a trust in the whole thing. And had I ever been, because I'm a medic, I'm a classically trained civilian paramedic. I was a medic in the SEAL teams. If I, was going to administer a drug to one of my guys, I'm going to do the research and figure out, right, what are the what are the biomarkers? What are the things I need? What are the dose sizes? What, is there any, potentiality for a negative efficacy in this? You do all those things, but when it comes to these mega corporations, you just figure, oh, it's a no-brainer. There's never been a problem. There's no whatever. But now we absolutely know that there's a symbiotic relationship.